Welcome to Kingdomize, the podcast, where we discuss how to see our lives and our world through a kingdom lens, how to infuse kingdom culture into our families, our workplaces, and our cities, as we all participate in the dream of Jesus to see his kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. So welcome back to Kingdomize, the podcast. This will be amazing today. Ian, I say that every week, and I'm right every week, so I feel good about it now. I feel like I'm telling the truth when I say this will be amazing. We are here with a friend today, Eric Dunavant, and he is the CEO of Paradigm. And there's so many sub-companies. We'll chat about that in a bit, but we met Eric through a mutual friend, Drew Brown, who now works for a CEO of one of Eric's companies. And I've met Eric and his wife, Angel, who is amazing, had a great chat with her. And so we're here to talk about Eric and his business, and we're in our Solutionaries series. We are looking for real world people, revolutionaries, who are bringing solutions to real world problems. And man, I'm so excited to get into this discussion today. And we actually did a trip down to your place, and we were so encouraged by what we saw. And Drew had hyped it up and went, "It can't be that good," and it was better. It was actually better. So yeah, so
we've been calling Drew a liar ever since.
So Eric is a certified financial planner. He's an entrepreneur, maybe a serial entrepreneur if I'm not careful.
Yeah, that's it.
And
guilty.
He's a speaker. We're going to get into his Kingdom ROI today. And Eric said, just before we went, he said, and I got some new stuff brewing. And so I can't wait to hear about that. He's worked with the family, his wife, as I've already said, really amazing. And the culture they've created in their company to help other people, other companies, other families create lasting wealth and to have clarity of purpose for their finances. Just amazing. So, Eric, we are so glad you took the time to spend a little time with us. And we can't wait to get into hearing your story, what you do and why. How are you?
Well, I'm good. I'm glad to be with both of you as well. I'm going to invite you down again because I miss being together. So I'm kind of thinking of today of just a continuation of us getting to hang out. We'll see where God takes it, but I'm excited to be here.
That'll be amazing. That'll be amazing. And how is Angel?
Oh, she's really good. She was here earlier. We're going to be ships passing in the night. She's going to a girlfriend's trip, and then I'm leaving on Sunday to go on a 5-day mountain bike trip with some buddies. And so she's amazing. We'll probably get into this. I don't know how we are finally going to be empty nesters at the end of September. And I don't know if that comes with joy or grief. And I'm being honest when I say that.
Probably a bit of both, but there you go. So wonderful, wonderful. So I know you've got a really incredible story, a little heartache at the beginning of your life. Maybe we can start there because it really does lead into what you do right now. There's so much tied into the beginning of your life and with your family. So why don't we start there? Is that okay? And then
that's great.
Pick it up from there and move forward. Let's do that.
Yeah. So I was born and raised in West Texas. My dad was a veterinarian. My grandfather that I never knew farmed cotton. And so he had multi-generational cotton land that his overall vision was to pass that down through the family. But my father, being an entrepreneur and a businessman, went in and took that and leveraged a lot of that towards his veterinary practice and expanding that. What then happened is my mom got really, really sick. And my dad was so focused on the business, he missed a lot of he didn't have good medical insurance. He didn't have good life insurance. He didn't, all those things that you would typically need. So we bury my mother the day before I start my freshman year of high school.
Wow.
Her medical bills and everything come in. He's leveraged all the farmland and everything towards the effort of, keeping the business running and everything. He ends up filing bankruptcy. So the home that I grew up in, we lost 2 months before I graduated high school.
Okay.
Wow.
So from a generational wealth standpoint, a generational abundance standpoint, I'm watching what my grandfather has created and that you're thinking is going to be a blessing of generation. Follow the statistic, this is not a US statistic. This is a global statistic. Only 10% of families succeed in passing generational wealth down to the third generation.
Okay.
because of failures. So
Right.
I'm observing that. At the exact same time, my mother's mother, my grandmother, who I did know, was an incredible woman of faith. I mean, one of my greatest memories, I have two incredible memories of her. One is of her and my grandfather falling asleep every night listening to the Bible on tape. And so one of my favorite things to do today is to listen to scripture read by those narrators because it just brings back such fondness for me. And then second was being a lazy teenager, which we often all were on Sunday mornings when I didn't want to get up for church. She would just simply go play her organ louder and louder until I finally got out of bed to get up to go to church. So she does all of this. My grandmother didn't have financial blessing, but she poured so much love and so much blessing into the family. What she ended up leaving me was enough money to buy a recliner. This recliner sits in my living room today. They call it the red chair. It's now blue because we've gone through so much. We had to completely get it recovered. But when we sit in that chair, we talk about my grandmother.
Wow. I love that.
We talk about the blessing of her and what she did. And so as I'm building my career in the financial services industry, knowing the success rate is 10% for families to pass on wealth, it's asking this question of what would it look like if we completely change the paradigm? Because as I'm in the financial services industry and building this business, what I keep seeing is the idea is, how do we prepare the money for the family? How do we prepare the money for the family? And that's the only question that gets asked. And the other thing I keep seeing, especially in the US, because this is where my focus is centered, is everything is about blessing maybe your children and your grandchildren, but I don't see a whole lot of conversations about truly creating generational wealth and abundance the way that I see it in scripture, the way that I see Abraham building generational blessing, or even David. And we can talk about the failures that happen in there, but David is actually creating something, this design. And when you think the name of our primary company is Paradigm, I got to stick this in real quick, which means beyond the day. We named it that after David's experience of recognizing that he would never see the temple built, but he had to plan beyond the day and prepare his family to build that temple. And that was part of his generational blessing. So I'm asking this question, okay, if the industry is built upon this idea of being comfortable with failure, you know, God's kingdom is completely upside down. What if we just started asking different questions? And what we ended up with was, let's help a family cast a 100-year vision. Let's help them think beyond today, beyond even when they're going to be here, A. And then B, what if we prioritize preparing the family for the money? And we could get into all sorts of ways, because the way that you do giving and impact and things like that is part of that preparation and why that matters. But what we begin to find is we reimagined that concept of preparing the family for the money, is that how people think about preparing the money for the family actually started changing. What the industry said was the best idea might not be the best idea if I'm thinking generationally. And so that's how we it all starts with my grandfather's failure, but my grandmother's success, and realizing that I go back to, I think Solomon, I'm going to cliff notes this, but I mean, Solomon says this in the Proverbs. Basically, if all you leave is wisdom, they're probably going to be okay. If all you leave is wealth, it may be fleeting. So what if we start with the emphasis on wisdom and love and the priority of that inside of the family? And that's kind of how this all gets birthed.
That's fantastic. Hey, listen, I want to go back. That's amazing. And we're going to keep following up on that. I know Ian's really excited about your 100-year vision, and he's going to ask about that. I want to go, where did you go to college? So you left for college. Like, did you
left for college
directly to college for wealth management? Is that what you did?
No. So I went to school at Texas A&M. Any of you suffer from ego when you were younger? Or even still wrestle with it today?
Does that go away or what?
So I just wanted to go get a degree in something that I thought would really, really impress people. So I left to go get a degree in nuclear engineering.
Buddy.
And I tell the story. This is so true. You remember the old Charlie Brown cartoon?
Sure.
Yes. So I walked into my first day of nuclear engineering 101, and the professor starts talking, and all I heard was wah, 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 wah. And I look around, and everybody in the room is shaking their head like they understand what he's saying. And I'm like, I am in trouble. And so I did that for about a semester. And then my grandfather's in farming. My dad's a veterinarian. My uncle is a rancher. I ended up moving into agribusiness. I was like, I like business. I understand agriculture. This fits me a whole lot better. So I ended up shifting to an agribusiness degree.
Okay.
I met my wife Angel while I was at college at Texas A&M. I met her my senior year. And then I went to work for a company that was General Mills. I went to work for them because that's in kind of as agribusiness and food. I worked for a grocery store growing up. So this starts to fit into things that I know. I don't know that we need to spend too much time. They moved us 5 times in 2 years. I'm like, I can't keep doing this. And that it was at the point that we'd moved 5 times in 2 years that I'm like, I need a career change. And I start reflecting on my grandfather's experience, my grandmother. And the only thing that I know is it's got to be something in financial. It's got to be something on disrupting these patterns that our family has lived, and how could I help people? And I thought it was to go get an MBA. So I got accepted to Arizona State's MBA program. Okay. I'm getting ready to go get an MBA. I walk in, and the dean of finance calls me in. He goes, I want to talk about your degree program. And so I went to go sit with him, and I explained my entire story. And he said, you don't need an MBA. You need to go get a job with a financial planning and family office type service and learn this business on the thing that's really important to you. And so that's kind of where that shifts and how I end up in finance.
Wow. Excellent. Well, that's why I asked the question. I was trying to get the thread between where you started, some hardships at the beginning, and then there. That's good. I was also hoping you would say you went for sports, because I remember being down and your whole office was surrounded by all these sports stuff, and you talk about your tours and hikes, and so
confession, I'm a band nerd.
Really?
I was in the marching band in high school. I was in the marching band in college. I didn't know anything or care anything about fitness until maybe this is a real quick story. Just about 10 years ago, I was like, what would it look like? One of my favorite phrases is, who would you have to become? And we don't have to go down this rabbit hole, but let me just tell you, this is what I've started to realize in my own life. We always say, well, I wish I had this. If God wanted you to have that, you'd have it right now, except you're not the man who can carry that thing. So he still has development inside of you of who you would have to become before he can give that gift to you. And so it's about 10 years ago, I was exposed and started on this journey of what are the things that I feel like God is calling me to, but I'm not that person yet. And it was in that I began to find my own fitness journey and even some other journeys, but it was asking that question of who would I have to become to be that? So I really don't have an athletic background. It's a huge part of my life today, but that's not where I started.
Wow. You have broken a rule now, Eric. We've never interviewed anyone that loved marching bands. So, I mean, that's not great news for you. I'm not saying it's good news. I'm just saying you're the first.
Well, there you go. I do love marching bands. I will confess.
You played in it. What did you play?
I was a drummer.
Oh, okay, drummer. I was hoping you'd say trombone. I played trombone. All right, I played trombone for 2 years. So
there you go.
All right, well, that's fantastic. So, Ian, you should ask the question about the 100 years now, because I know you've been waiting.
No, I'm where I'm interested, Eric, is how that formed. What are the principles that formed the 100-year vision? I understand, as you reviewed history, only 10% success rate gets the third generation. But in your exploring of that, what was the building blocks that you discovered that you would say, okay, that's the reason, man, we need different building blocks for this to happen. That's why I'm intrigued to know about that.
Well, I'm gonna pull a Stephen Covey and begin with the end in mind, because we were talking about this with my daughter last night. She was even sitting, and she's like, I feel a little guilty at how wealthy our family is. And I said, well, you shouldn't, because it comes with its own responsibility. And we were talking about some of our giving impact. Like, these are some things that are happening. And I'm like, do you understand? We have inside of us, we're giving a substantial amount of what is flowing through us because we have a responsibility. And that's actually what God calls us to do, is to be a part of this blessing. And so when you talk about this, here's what I kept seeing, Ian, is this developed slowly over time, but I was recognizing a pattern that was, okay, so we raise up maybe one or two generations, and then and I'm seeing a lot of people, a lot of organizations and things guilty of this right now, of I can't figure out what to do with my kids or to make sure this is going to be a blessing and not a burden to the second or third generation. So when I pass away, I'm just going to give it all away. And when you look at like Warren Buffett's giving pledge, or, the Gates giving pledge, and to me, I was like, this is like surrendering, waving the white flag. I have no idea what to do. And I just kept being convicted of, is it possible to change the narrative? What if we prepared the next generation? What if we created a vision like David did that said, look, I am building this up, but it has a purpose. It has a reason, and I'm going to entrust you, and I'm going to give you the vision and the trust, and hopefully you continue to steward that well, but that's your stewardship. But what if I trusted the next generations and used our lifetime together as like train tracks to train them around what is important, around our generosity, and so that's part of this, is getting our family engaged in our own generosity journey. One of our big callings is centered around generational poverty, and what does it take to change mindsets and to put hope into populations, and to realize sometimes you're going to fail and that it's not going to do what you wanted to do, but what could you learn from that? And inviting our kids into that conversation and that journey. And I just was changing that equation of, instead of waving the white flag and surrendering and say, well, that's just the way it's going to be, what if we thought it could be something different?
Wow. That's so good. That's so good.
Yeah, that is very good. And that, because I'm an older guy, so I've kind of met a lot of significantly wealthy people in my life, and observed, that they've done really well with their own children, but the grandchildren don't always get it. And sometimes they don't get it for lots of different reasons. Sometimes it's just pure entitlement. And that's never addressed or arrested by the parents of those children, and certainly not by the grandparents of the children, because they feel that's out of bounds to actually come back in and talk about that,
Well, but can I step on that? I think that's the challenge. I can't tell you how many conversations I'm having with grandparents right now. They're like, oh, my kids are good. I'm like, yeah, that's not the problem. It is your grandchildren, because you're more than likely I'm going to give you the scenario of how this happens. More than likely, your kids grew up watching you struggle, because it's not a straight line up to success.
Yeah.
There were setbacks, and and your kids saw all of that, but your grandchildren have been born into the environment that success is now here. So how do we capture the story of, like, it hasn't always been this way? And there is a responsibility and an obligation. And I would challenge any of the grandparents who are like, well, it's not my responsibility to step in. It absolutely is, because you created this while you're alive. We still have an opportunity, and maybe we can't shift it completely, but what if we could shift it some? What if we could really start to make a difference? And I don't want to step on any toes, but I really feel like that's kind of what we're being called to step in, is we want to align family and capital. And if we only hit that first generation, we're going to hit the same statistics, because that's not where it happens. It's usually in that second.
Yeah. So like I'm passionate about seeing that cascade in discipleship, right? Because what my observation has been is that the grandchildren have not been baptized in the vision of the grandfather. The reason why we are here is for this. Yes, we get blessed on the way through. We have a good life on the way through. Whatever. But that's not our goal. Like our goal is to be a conduit for the kingdom of God. And
that's right.
All of our needs will be met, and probably more than met. But that's not the game plan. The game plan is, how do I generate generational wealth. So when I'm talking to my grandson, I'm going, so for your grandchildren, how's that going to work?
Yes.
For your grandchildren, how's that going to work? Because if you ain't got it, there's no chance they're going to get it, right?
That's right.
And so I'm quite encouraged by what you're saying for grandparents to re-engage, because like there's a particular family who's been in my life, and they've been very interestingly careful on how they've downloaded the finance to their children. They've not given them hundreds of millions, you know, tens of millions, but not hundreds of millions. And they go, okay, let's see how you do with that. And then we'll re-engage in 5 or 6 years' time, and then we'll reevaluate. So as your capacity grown, so that you can actually understand that, as your understanding grown, as the vision remained the same, or you just buying toys.
That's right. That's right.
Etc. Right. But I've really not seen too much, to be honest. I've really not seen too much of that third generation embracing the vision of the grandparents to carry that vision through for the next 2 or 3 generations. So you kind of give us a little heads up there in terms of, okay, no, grandparents have got to get involved. Well, what else has got to happen?
Well, I think it's a blind spot, but if I can name it, I've seen it. Here's the blind spot. A lot of your because most of this is first generation going to second generation wealth, I think is what we're talking about, because that's really kind of where I feel like our sweet spot is. I want to get in with that first generation and really start to make a difference for the second, third, fourth, fifth, and on. You take a first generation founder, how much energy do they put into culture and vision and values inside of the business that they grow? Tons. And it's one of the reasons, it's like Simon Sinek, I think, culture eats strategy for breakfast. You go out and what is Kingdomize about? You guys are about putting a kingdom culture inside of what? Business. And the question is, why do we hesitate to put a kingdom culture inside of our family?
Yep.
But we do. And so I kind of call it a blind spot. I've even had owners who are like, oh, that's just the soft, frilly stuff. It's like, no, that's the stuff. That's the stuff that's actually going to make a difference generationally. And that's what we're hoping to wake people up to, is you have to align family and capital. You can't just prepare the money for the family. I've had people like, Eric, well, I'm working with the XYZ advisor or whatever. And I'm like, they may be really, really good. There's a lot of good people out there at preparing the money for the family. It's a crowded space. The question is, who's walking alongside you to prepare the family for the money? And if you actually started to do that, is the way you're preparing the money for the family actually answered correctly? And that, I think, go back to this kingdom idea. That's where it flips it on its head, because God calls us to ask different questions.
So, Eric, take us into your ROI then. That's probably where this fits now then. Take us into your ROI.
Yeah, so return on investment is that this actually is going to connect really easily. Return on investment is this idea of, how do I prepare the money for the family?
Yeah.
And for me, what we created is a brand new measurement. I'm going to tell you this. You love when God gives you a download and you're like, nobody else has said, when I go look, it's like, nobody else has said this before or thought of this before. And I start looking around, like, we're actually in the process of getting this trademark. Like, we're getting a registered trademark off of this phrase. I'm like, I can't believe this. God gave me this download of return on intention.
Yeah. Yeah. Good.
And that's really beyond the day. How intentional am I being, and am I getting a return on my intention? And where we kind of connected that ROI was, that is the preparing the family for the money, is being super intentional about why. And it's probably one of my favorite questions. I'll sit down with really wealthy families, or even slightly wealthy families, and we'll have a conversation. They're like, yeah, I got this and this, I got this trust and that trust. Da, da, da. My favorite question is like, great, why? Why are you doing all of that? And when you get down to the end of it, when you start peeling that onion back and peeling that onion back over and over again, we keep exposing this blind spot of, no one is thinking about preparing the money for the family right now. Nobody's thinking about the return on intention.
Yeah. So good. Interesting that you said that, because you're talking about going to 3 or 4 generations or more. And the people that talk about knowing your why or whatever, they say people don't ask why enough. You actually have to go layers of why, right?
Yes.
Not the surface layer of why. Well, because I want to do that. Go deeper than that, because there's other. It's got to go deeper to get to the foundational one that will keep you when things happen. So I love that so much. That's really good. Really good.
And so from a very pragmatic way as a company, how do you do that, Eric?
Well, it starts. I love how God brings the people in your life that like one of the gifts that God has given me is I can look at people who are not living in their potential. And there are many times God will like shine a light of this person was designed to do this. Go pull that out of them. So I had a woman working for me. Her name is Taya. She came to work for me as an assistant, a secretary. And I'm watching her manage conflict inside of the office as conflicts would happen. I'm watching her, I was much less mature at that time, manage me when like I would get out of control angry or pull something, I had a really bad temper before I'd started doing the who would I have to become. Like there were some things that I really needed to work on. We'd talk about it later. God, on the 30th anniversary of my mom's death, God took me away on an experience and finally it started to peel away some of the real rough edges I had. But while I was still in that phase, she still loved me through it and kind of helped me. And so we reached a point and I'm like, I think like I kept feeling this call to really create a piece of so we're a financial services organization, right? We've got people who understand trust and understand investments and understand all the things about typical return on investment. I'm like, but we don't have any part of our company that helps people with return on intention. I have a calling. I have a direction. I have no idea how to do that. And God's like, go get Taya to learn how to do that. And so for the last 10 years, she's just been through training and worked with families. And I would say now she's probably the leading, it's a well-kept secret. She's probably one of the leaders in the industry on preparing the family for the money. And that's why I'm excited about where we're going is like, I feel like God's getting ready to really just kind of launch us into this area because her skill set and everything is so elite in that area. And she was a secretary, kind of almost like, when, was it Samuel looking for David and like, you got anybody else? Cause none of these people are the king, and I'm looking around for this. God's like, no, it's the secretary. That's the person that's going to be the person to carry this return on intention vision. And she just embraced it and loved it and has built something beautiful and letting her go thrive in that lane along with all of our financial experts and finding that pull it. And Ian, I'd be honest with you, let's talk about the statistic is that 90% of families will fail. And everyone's like, well, what if you don't solve the 90%? I'm like, well, what if I get it to 50%?
Yeah, absolutely.
What if I get it to 70%? Are we moving the kingdom? Is the kingdom advancing? The kingdom is advancing. And so that's really what I've been passionate about.
Again, I'm going to have to dig in because I'm a practical guy, right? So Taya engages with the family. What's the platform conversation to start this process?
It starts with so if we're onboarding a new family, we're asking them financial questions, but she's also built some surveys. And I think if we're going to where does it start? If you talk to a mom and dad of some kids, they're going to be like, oh, our kids are good and everything's okay. And so it starts with a survey of mom and dad but making them take it separately so you can find out how far apart their answers are. That often becomes a surprise. Like I said, the kids were okay in this area. I said the kids were, you're like, you guys don't agree on this part, but parents don't sit down and talk about that. The next layer of that, once we get deeper into engagement is, okay, now let's go ask the kids their thoughts on it. And so she will actually get in conversations with the kids and get their 360 feedback on the parents on they say this is going on. That to me, you go kind of went into blind spots of preparing the family for the money. This is a blind spot I've found to be true for me. I'm a client of my own product. So it's really bad for me to run my own family meetings. It's bad because here's what I've found. When I come into the room and try and lead, my kids see me as dad, like Moses bringing the 10 commandments down off the mountain. And, they sit there like, okay, when's this going to be over? what I found is when I bring Taya in, that neutral third party opens something up in the room. It gives my kids some freedom. They have someone that now is giving a voice to them. We find out so much more about what our kids are thinking and what they want when we can have a neutral third party. So there's a lot of good families out there trying to do this. And they're like, I'm just going to do this on my own and go run my own family meetings. I'm like, you can do that, but know that unless you brought in a third party, you're probably missing a bigger picture of what's going on and the chance to go deeper and take that further. And so it's not only getting the feedback for the kids, but it's also inviting that third party in to be able to help now start to open up conversation around what's working, what's not working, what are you seeing, what are you not seeing, and what are our blind spots.
I love that. I mean, you must, in this field, you guys must be quite unique, right? Or is there a growing awareness in family offices this is absolutely critical, or is it just everybody's working with a blind spot basically?
No, if you were to ask my opinion, I think we're about 5 years ahead of the industry right now. I'm watching some people wake up. I'm seeing some articles being written. I'm watching some things being done. What has really been interesting, Ian, is it's not like this has been ignored. What has happened in the past is this has been siloed. So what you've had is you've had people who are working on, like I go back to my words, the return on investment side in the family offices. And then you've had people who are working on the preparing the family for the money side, and they're not coming together. And I will tell you, because we were talking to a team out of Arizona the other day, and they're like, man, we just keep struggling trying to get families. And I said, I know why. Because a family understands the ROI financially when you can show them the return of what you're going to be able to help them do. They can't see tangibly the return on intention. So you're trying to come in, charge them what truly is probably a fair and reasonable fee, but because they can't see the financial return on it, they start to question it and they start to wonder. And what we found is in putting those two together, it actually lowers the barrier of us. It's like, this is just how we do it. So they're naturally attracted to that. And then what we found is God actually ended up blessing people more financially when they got really clear on this. Like there'd be more financial blessing that would come through than what was in their original planning. So the financial makes up for the other side of it. And it's this unique blending. And I think the industry in the next 3 to 5 years is going to figure that out. We just happen to be early.
No, that's good. And so, you talked about dealing with founders. I think when we were with you, it seemed to be your, I can't remember the phrase now, but the segment that you were looking for was people between 55 and, 63. Is that changed at all?
Well, so we've got, you're gonna get all the, I guess I'm gonna reveal all the behind the curtain stuff, which is not that big a deal. But so we've got what we call 2 avatars. So we've got Bob and Mary is our first, which is kind of that 55 to 65, 5 years in front of or on the other side of an exit, because we're right in that transition moment of when everything's, I'd a whole lot rather be 5 years ahead of an exit than I would be 5 years on the other side of an exit. But the real reason for that and the catalyst for that, because of the family emphasis, and your founders who've already sold are going to recognize is the minute it goes from dollars on paper to dollars in the bank account, all the relational dynamics change. So as much as we can get ahead of that, we want to get ahead of that. Sometimes you're late if the money's already dropped in and expectations and things like that from family members has started to change. That is our first avatar. And then the second that we just started asking the question of is, okay, we keep getting introduced to a lot of people who are building towards that. So we named them Matt and Emily. And the question was, what would it look like to meet Bob and Mary 10 to 15 years before they became Bob and Mary? And so the dynamic is a lot the same. It's just backed up from a maturity and life stage. And so what I would say, if you kind of is young kids to teenagers at home and building and accelerating a business that's on the acceleration path, is that second avatar. And the second is kind of like where Angel and I are stepping into now. Empty nesting, second phase of life is starting out. Grandkids are coming. So we've got the chance. Like most of these, the grandkids are still young enough. We can go in and make a difference that the entitlement and things like that's not getting so implanted.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess, part of my journey was, when I began to understand the purpose of finance and the purpose of wealth, to establish God's kingdom on the earth, when I began to understand that, started working with the 50 plus, and really, I was getting nowhere. You know, their minds was already made up. I had nothing, you know, as far as they're concerned, I had nothing to say, nothing to teach. They were the head honchos, whatever, you know. And so I go, wow, that's good. And so then for the last 20 years, I've focused on the 20s to 30s.
Yeah.
You know, because I realized I can actually brainwash those people much easier. And give them a kingdom perspective for their life and for their family and for their wealth, you know.
Yes.
Of course, some of them now are in their 40s, and as you know, you win some and you lose some, and
that's right.
Not everybody crosses the line and whatever, you know. But that ended up being probably my sweetest spot, because maybe I just didn't have the patience or the skill set to deal with the 50 plus. Maybe that could have well been it, you know.
But the 50 plus is challenging. Again, if I was going to express where I feel like we've been able to crack that open, is the why, and then peeling the why onion. Because what you get them into is like, I'm doing this for my children. Great. Okay. So your children, what about for your grandchildren? What does this look like for your great grandchildren? Would you want your great grandchildren to suffer because you didn't think this through? And so you start pulling at that, and it starts opening up some of that blind spot that they don't realize is there. That's at least where we've seen the success in that space, but it's not a quick conversation. It is exposing them to that blind spot.
Beautiful. No, that's great. Thank you, Eric. That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah.
Really, really good, Eric. Can you tell us a couple stories of, I mean, what you're saying is good, and we love the philosophy behind what you do, but and maybe you can't use names of these people, whatever, but tell us people that got it. So you go in, you have these chats, and they go, you're right, I haven't been thinking about grandchildren or great grandchildren, and I got to make this shift. Tell us a couple stories about what that looks like.
Yeah, so there's one family we've worked with for quite a number of years, and this one's fun because this is unique, because this doesn't always happen. We started working with them when the second gen was ready to transfer to the third gen of manufacturing business in Colorado. And so we're working with them, thinking through how do we go second generation to third generation. And there's some of the financial, but it's also the preparation. So we're at the point where third generation is now completely taken over the business. And that was about a 10 to 15 year journey of like watching all of these pieces come together while also building the vision and the mission for the greater purpose of this company. So like they just finished writing a book about their great grandfather who founded the company. So that's being told and passed down to the grandchildren, right? So they're telling the story of why this wealth is here and what the purpose is. But not only that, what we're beginning to see is the fourth generation is now in high school, right? High school, getting ready to go to college, but we're already starting conversations with Gen 3 about what does this look like to be preparing Gen 4 and beyond to continue what great grandfather started. And so you're peeling all of this down. So that's one who kind of had already started it, but you start putting structure and other things around that helps them flesh that out more. And then, I mean, there's another one. I think we're still kind of early in this because when we started working with them, they were more of our Matt and Emily type. And so it's been this journey of, as the kids are growing up, how do you make sure the kids are ready to budget? Some of it's just basic, to handle money, to understand giving. So doing family giving meetings, and how do you train them around the generosity and bringing them into those generosity conversations. And now those children are starting to get married and have their own kids. And so with Taya, it's just like, okay, so then you're reaching a different level of maturity. You're starting to have different conversations. And that's part of like one of the things, people are like, well, when do we stop hiring you? I was like, well, you can get rid of us anytime that you want to, but most families find that life is transitioning and continue to go on. And the value of keeping us around matters because we're continuing to grow and mature with your family and bring that wisdom. And it's not just the financial side, but the family side of helping you make sure, okay, so the dynamics are changing. The family's getting older. The grandkids are coming in now. So for this family meeting, What are the things that we need to be talking about? Or maybe this family, you end up with 2 or 3 kids. So we need to have a meeting with this family and this family and this family about specifically what they need, and, give them some of the unique positioning in each one before we bring the whole family together. And I think that's one of the things that's unique about what we do is I don't have a cookie cutter answer. I don't have a cookie cutter financial answer. I don't have a cookie cutter family answer. Our goal is to come in, hear the heart of the family for what God is calling them to their 100 years.
Right.
What is your 100-year vision? What have you already done on the family side? Because some families are awakening to this and are starting to do things. It's like, we don't need to duplicate things you've already done. How did the kids receive? So go ask the kids, how did they receive it? What did they think of it? Is there any blind spots there? And having the conversations with them simply to say, okay, here's now the launch pad of where we can go based on where you are and based on where you're trying to accomplish.
I mean, one of the things that was really impressive for us when we had those few days hanging out for you, we had never heard of a VP of generosity before. And that was so good, man. That was so flipping refreshing, like, to hear that. Just explain to us how did that emerge?
Are you talking about Angel's role inside the company? Okay,
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, so I wish I could say, well, no, this emerged from a couple different places. The first heart of it is, my story, right? I mean, it's a broken story coming out of, what the first thing a guy who's experienced bankruptcy, who watched his father build and build and build, for the world tells you, you just need to go get rich enough that doesn't happen to you.
Yeah.
Right. So for the first few years of our marriage and our life, I just chased wealth. I chased making money. I mean, you got an audio tape on it. You got a book on it. I'll read it. Think and Grow Rich, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, all of that. I mean, I've consumed every single bit of that for the purpose of simply getting wealthy for the sake of getting wealthy. And then, this is so awful, but I love how God works and how gracious he is. I'm like, well, if the Bible has something about how to get wealthy, then I'm going to go figure that out, because then I'll manipulate God and get him to give me what I need from a wealth standpoint. So we went into a Crown financial class. It's not Crown anymore. I think it's Compass now. Started by, and if people know who Dave Ramsey is, Dave Ramsey's not original. He was trained by Larry Burkett and Howard Dayton. Howard Dayton and Larry Burkett came together and created Crown. So this predates Dave Ramsey. So we're sitting in a class, and I think the very first class is You Don't Own Anything. And I'm like, oh. And then the second class was if you can't steward what God has given you today, why would he give you anything else? And I'm like, my framework's completely broken. And so we're sitting in the middle of that, and and through the whole course, it's like Angel and I it's like, okay, so what the Word of God says is seek him first. Okay, so then you go to first fruits, tithe. So we just start embracing that. And it's like, okay, so where we really fall in love with this and this begins to happen is she gets pregnant with my son Clayton. Angel gets pregnant with my son Clayton, and we feel God saying she needs to stay home, but we run the budget. We're $200 short on paper every single month. I don't care how it comes out. We cannot figure out how to make ends meet if she's going to stay home, but we want to honor what God says. So when the check would come in, the very first thing we'd do, we didn't have a home church at this time. So we'd get, all the mailings that annoy you and you throw away. Habitat for Humanity or the local food bank or whatever. We'd take all of those and sit them on the table, and we'd pray over them and ask where God would have us give based on those coming in. And so we'd write checks of the first fruits to that. And that year, again, I told you what happened on paper. We paid off $7,000 in debt.
Wow.
We
Beautiful.
fell in love with giving right there. Like generosity became our love language, right? There's like God, and then within years, God, you go back to this, who would you have to become? It's how I know that God works from this standpoint. God just kept faithfully showing up and giving me more responsibility and more vision and more. And I was like, well, all it requires is us to be generous, and you're going to trust us with more. And, that doesn't mean it doesn't come with ups and downs. I tell people I've been down to zero at least 3 times, and but I've never been less. I mean, God has always, even in those zeros, I've had everything I needed. I've been completely provided for. And I just was zero on the balance sheet. And, it's like, but that's okay because God is the provider. And so we're getting the business going, and you may or may not know this company. I want everybody to know this company. So there's a company out of Lubbock, Texas called Beat & Bow Homes.
Yeah, we know them.
And so Beat & Bow, Rick and Holly are telling their story of discovering the idea of first fruits in business. And I got that and I was like, that's what we need to do. And so I remember one day we're driving home from a trip and I'm like, Angel, I want you to listen to this. So she starts listening and she's like, you mean my role can be giving money away from inside the business? And I'm like, yes. And so I go back to it's this idea. We think that life is compartmentalized. I do business over here and I do life over here. And so our blind spot with our family is we don't bring mission, vision, and values into the family. If you want to ask me what our blind spot is financially, is we're reluctant to bring that same generosity spirit. Like we may be diligent to do our tithe. Are you doing the same thing on your business? Are you using your business in the same way to unlock generosity in the same way you would if you were getting a paycheck? And in unlocking that and creating kind of our own journey of generosity and how you go on that and how you embrace not only, I mean, we've used that to do mission trips and take our employees on mission trips. We have an employee giving meeting that happens once a month. And it really is kind of crazy. They've had months where they've had tons of money to give away. They've had months where they barely had any money to give away because, again, some of the economic cycles, Angel will tell you the stories, like some of the most beautiful months are the months we barely have anything, but the impact of what happens and the prayer that's happening inside of that and the joy that's happening inside of the people inside of that sometimes is so multiplied versus if we gave, $1 million away or $500,000 away.
Yeah. So good. So good.
Fantastic.
And I've told that story of Angel having met you guys, and every company I talk to, I say, you know what you need to do? You need to have a VP of generosity. So if I am quoting you, just so you know, it's not like I'm not acting like it's mine. So Eric, you said something on the way by, and it will be very common for you, but I want to hit on it before we're done today. You talked about the calling to business. You talked about calling.
Yep.
And I want you to hit on that really well for other leaders, other business people that are listening today, because everything you say has to do with being a certain person, right? And we're all about here, not lowering the pastoral call down, but raising all the other calls up. So everyone that's called are sacred, right? And so talk about your story about the calling when you understood it, and how do you relate that to others? Because I think there's a direct line between if they know they're called to business, then it becomes maybe easier to understand the kingdom principles that come with it.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know how old I was. I have an old thing from, Sunday school when I was a kid. It was like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it was like, I want to be a pastor and a firefighter. And so I've held on to that because I love talking. But I don't want to stand in front of a church. I don't want to run a church, and I feel called to business. I love business. I love the production. And the more that I've been in it, I mean, I don't know how many business owners I've talked to. You talk to people, it's like, I'm just going to quit this and go to the mission field because that's the only way I can serve God. And it's like, stop. That is not true. And I'm not the person who said this. I wish I remember who said this. You guys may know. But as a pastor gets an opportunity to be in front of their people for 4 hours on Sunday, maybe an hour and a half on Wednesday. That's it. Maybe it's only an hour on Sunday. It maybe only be 20 minutes on Sunday, right? I mean, but you're talking about what is the influence that church is having. When people come into this office, they're here for 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was like, okay, this is a mission field. And I just it's been peeling layers of more understanding what this means. God invites us on journeys with him. I've never found that he goes, hey, here's where we're going, and tells you the whole story. It's like, just come on this journey and this adventure with me and find out more about who I am. And so he's constantly just revealing himself more and more to me. But I've taken very seriously that, like, I'm simply just the pastor of a business, which means I have to be in the word. I have to understand what God's word says. I have to be, and don't be intimidated by that. Understand that just opening the word one day and reading a few verses is the beginning of that journey, right? That's where it starts. And what I find is that over my lifetime, like, I've fallen in love with God's word. I've fallen in love with scripture because why? Because it comes back. Everything that he says is true. It all resonates. So the more that I experience that relationship with him and that truth with him, like, it comes back and makes me want to go deeper. I always tell men is like, or women who are running companies is like, you don't need to be where I am. All you need to do is take one step, because there was a day when I was where you were.
Yeah.
And the only difference between me and you is I've got 10 to 15 years of experience of God taking me deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And I've got a lifetime of experience of that. So start the journey with him, because you don't know where he wants to take you, but can you at least surrender to the fact that maybe the reason you're in business is because he's called you to be there, and there's people he needs you to impact inside of that role, because that's where those people are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. Fantastic.
Eric, so good today. I wish we did have those 3 hours we talked about. Fantastic. Listen, I know people are going to want to get more of what you're saying, what you're doing. We probably have people listening that have wealth going, man, how do I invest this well? How do I make sure it keeps growing for generation 2, 3, 4, and so on? So how do people get a hold of you, Eric?
Yeah, the easiest way, I've got a simple little website, ericl360.com, ericl360. On there, it's got access to all of my connections, all of my websites, all of my stuff. Inside of there, I wrote a book about a year ago called At the Bistro with Bob. I had a gentleman who mentored me named Bob Pritchard, and I wrote the story of his mentorship of me. Why do I say that? Because you can get a free copy on Kindle there, or you can go to Amazon and buy it. We offer free copies on Kindle. You can download. I've also got an assessment there, which is the Who Would You Have to Become assessment, which is just kind of taking a step back. And it's not going to score you against other men. It's not going to give you a score. What it is going to ask you some really, really good reflective questions. And then from there, if you want to get in touch with me personally, there's actually a way to get in touch with me, get onto my personal calendar, and we can have a visit and talk about what that looks like from there.
Wow. So good. Ian, last thoughts, my friend.
This has been awesome today. Awesome today. It's so refreshing to talk about money in an unreligious way.
Yeah.
It's so refreshing to see the redemptive purpose of wealth being so well articulated, Eric. Thank you so much. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be helped as a result of this. Thank you so much. We appreciate the download that God's put in your heart, and being able to spend some time with you today has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And Eric, I just want to say one more time how much we enjoyed being with you. And so it's great to have these chats like this, but it's also great to be able to say that what we're hearing today, we've seen in action. And so the people listening today, I want you to be aware that we've seen Eric, we've met Taya. She's fantastic. We've met the team. And so, you can be very assured that what he's saying, I mean, we scratched the surface today about the stuff that God has revealed to Eric and to Angel and the team. And so thank you for listening today to our podcast with Eric Dunavant from Paradigm. We're glad you came by. And so you're probably a solutionary too. It's not just us. You're a solutionary. God's put you where you are today for a purpose. There's purpose. And so whether you're in business or a pastor in government, whatever sphere you're called to, there's a purpose in that. So find that calling, find that purpose, and live it out with passion, and that's why we exist, to help people do that. And so thanks for tuning in today. We'll be back next week with another great episode of Kingdomize, the podcast.
Thanks for joining us today on Kingdomize, the podcast. Let's keep the discussion going throughout the week on our socials or on our website, kingdomizeglobal.com. Contact us today to see how we can walk together to see more of God's kingdom in your city as it is in heaven.